New York has been building its wrestling. It's been building it through the youth. A lot of programs going on. It's good to get out and help the younger guys and hopefully bring them up to the college level.
Living in New York has some challenges being a wrestler. We don't have an actual campus like other schools, so we have to discipline ourselves a lot more in order to make sure that we are able to compete at the highest level.
I credit wrestling just for understanding life. I had fantastic coaches. I never appreciated these guys. I never thanked them because I didn't know. I was too young to appreciate. But my way of giving back to them is to pay it forward.
This is the bad man himself, the big trash talker of the MMA world.
Chael Sonnen has hands down the best mouthpiece in any sport. Better than Floyd, better than Conor, anybody else around.
We've got Vanderlei Silva coming to us from a men's shelter bathroom in Brazil. Yeah, man, I find it a little bit weird.
People call this an art, which it's not. This is not mixed martial arts. This is a cage fight. Art is a form of communication, and there's no greater form of communication than speaking.
Hey, fellas, when my partner hits me with a low single, I'm going to fall. But when I lose my balance here, I want to fall over the top. It gives me more options, and it shuts down on his options. I push away, I'm turning towards his shoes. That's important for the next step. Can we do it? Yeah. Simple? Yes. Show me.
I've coached a lot of kids. I've never been paid or thanked either, but I know where their appreciation is because I have it from my coaches too, and I expect those young men that I teach to eventually give back to the sport and to pay it forward as well.
And this was my first time getting to work out at Hunter with this coach and with this team, man, but I would happily be back. I come in, I'm a total stranger. You guys didn't owe me anything, but it was a respect factor. You know, hey, I got somebody from the Brotherhood here who needs to show some technique, and we need to be respectful. It means a lot. You guys will understand a little more of what I'm talking about when you get to be my age and you look back. I just want to tell you guys thank you. I want to tell you keep up the good work. Listen to your coach. You're in good hands. Appreciate you guys letting me come in. Thank you for being here, Mike. Appreciate you being here.
When I talk to the guys, you know, like Chael, and you know, they can turn it on and they can play this, you know, character.
Feast your eyes and fantasize, ladies and gentlemen, because on June 24th, the king of pay-per-view is coming to your decrepit building in your concrete-ridden city. I'm taking your money, and I'm going back to Westland, Oregon, still undefeated and still undisputed.
New York is disgusting. The only reason I'm coming to New York, aside to kick Vanderlei Silva's ass, is to take New Yorkers' money. And June 24th, the second I'm done, I will put it in a big duffel bag and I will return home to West Lynn.
You know, sometimes you see somebody on TV and you're like, the guy doesn't look that big. You're a big dude. You're a big dude.
Well, I appreciate that. Basically natural, too, basically.
I love that. I love that. You know, I want to start sort of at the beginning. What got you into fighting? What got you into professional fighting?
Oh, man, I didn't have a choice. I was born into a family of wrestlers. My uncles wrestled, my father wrestled, my cousins were all great wrestlers, and so I just followed their footsteps. I didn't really know any different, and then fighting came about. I was training with a couple of guys, Dan Henderson, Randy Couture, if those names ring a bell. We were just wrestling every day, and I just showed up at 3 o'clock one day for wrestling practice, and they threw me some gloves, and we were doing that instead. So I literally had no choice.
Yeah, I mean, there's wrestling, and then there's, you know, boxing and Brazilian. I mean, when did you start incorporating those other arts into your craft? I mean,
I started at 19. I started boxing at 19, and then I got into kickboxing right after that. And I was trying to find jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu was really tough in Oregon, where I'm from. We just didn't have a lot of gyms, and this would date you back to about 1995.
Before there was like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu place in every city. Now they're everywhere. Now right. LA's got like dozens.
They're surrounded by it. But yeah, to your point, it was a little bit harder to find. But eventually, and then you had to do everything in separate gyms. You wrestled over here and you boxed over here, and then on Saturday night you try to put it all together in a competition. And now they have MMA gyms where you can go in and it's its own sport. But it was tough in the beginning.
Were you always able to handle yourself when you were a kid growing up, or did you sort of find, you know, fighting and then sort of made it a professional thing?
Well, I mean, I was always kind of a rough guy. You know, you grew up in the country, but I was small. I was a little guy, so you know, we didn't see a whole lot of that. But if it came up, I was always up for the challenge.
And where did you find sort of the passion to do it every day? I mean, where did that come from?
You know, that's a good question. I had, again, I'd been doing combat forever because it was in wrestling. And I wrestled in scholarship in college, and I had some good memories there. But one thing about wrestling, a downside, it's my favorite sport, but the downside is your career is very small. When you get out of college, you're done. And largely when you get out of high school, you're done. If you have an opportunity to college, you know, maybe you can extend it, but there was just nothing else to do with it. And so I tried to make an Olympic team. I failed, and it was either move on in life, or if you want to stay in sports, you know, adapt a little bit to martial arts. That was the closest thing.
Yeah, I mean, were you surprised to find that there was a ability to make a career out of being in the martial arts and out of fighting, and that you were able to do it yourself?
Yeah, yeah. I never had any goal of making it a job. I didn't know that wasn't even on the table back then. We weren't on television. Getting on pay-per-view was really tough, and seen some real challenges. The media didn't care about it. Getting a chance to talk with someone like you in front of all these nice people it just wasn't a thing back then.
Smiling at you, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It just wasn't a thing, and so yeah. But I was lucky. I was there right at the right time to watch the boom happen and still get to participate.
Yeah, I mean, so when you started that career, I mean, how did you take it very seriously, or was it something that you were like, okay, I'll dabble in a couple professional fights, and the UFC obviously came around? Tell us how you got introduced to that.
Yeah, well, I did take it very seriously, but taking it serious meant something different back then because you were, it was a hobby, and as far as time went, it was something that you moonlighted as. You go to work all day and then go moonlight and do something like that, and maybe find a match 2 or 3 times a year. So as the industry started to develop and exposure started to grow, then it really did change into where it did become a business and it became something you could do full time. But again, there was just a lot of luck involved with that. If I would have been born 10 years earlier, I would have missed it, and just always looked at the guys today and thought, man, I wish I could have participated in that. But I did get lucky in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, you had a lot of success pretty early in your career. You were dominating that sort of thing. And were you surprised at like the celebrity and the attention that was coming out of that? Like guys sort of coming up to you at bars. I'm sure that was a bit of a head spin.
Yeah, it was for me. I mean, I was just a small town guy, and in wrestling, you work really hard, but maybe you wrestle in front of 80 or 90 people, everybody's family members. There was no such thing as a wrestling fan. I don't know if there's a wrestling fan now. But yes, to your point, when you get into martial arts, it did grow, and you became a little bit more recognizable, which was just the power of TV. My life was the same. I'm doing the same stuff now twice a day, every day that I used to do back then, but instead of doing it in front of 80 people, there are some people that tune in, and yeah, that's a fun thing, too. That was never something I strived for, but it was fun to be along for that ride. I've built some good memories because of that.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember the first time cameras started entering the equation and sort of being cognizant about the persona that you were being perceived as, the guy that you're being perceived as? Now, obviously, you're a outspoken guy, but, I mean, was that always there?
I do remember when it happened. The first time I ever signed an autograph was at the MGM in Las Vegas, and I had cornered a guy, and I thought, wow, these fans really know what's going on. They want an autograph from a corner man. Well, there used to be a fighter named Evan Tanner, and apparently we look similar. That's who they thought I was. I was mistaken for Evan Tanner, but so I do remember that very well. Where the elevator, everything. I remember the guy wanted my autograph. Wow. But case of mistaken identity.
Yeah. But then you started signing some legit autographs. You remember that first sort of?
Yeah, that's right. Then I finally got my run at it. I remember pulling up in a car. I was with some other fighters, and there was a group of people waiting when we got there. And I was with some fighters that I respected, and I said, I think you guys got some fans waiting. Yeah. And they looked at me and they said, I think they're for you. And I remember thinking, why would anyone want to talk to me? And I got out of the car, and they were. And that sounded like a very arrogant statement. I didn't mean it like that as much as just tell the story that I do remember the first time somebody thought I was cool. I was 20-some years old. I'd never had that experience before. Yeah. I never got invited to parties and stuff like this. When I get out of a car and there were some people that wanted to see me, yes, I remember it. It made me feel good.
Yeah, and I'm sure you get a lot of requests for people posing with the foot, the fighting stance, that sort of thing. I mean, what's the most popular thing people ask for?
That's one of the most popular.
You gotta be careful, I'm
So
sure.
you bring up the choke out. I had a person wanted a choke picture. They wanted to put me in the choke, and I said, okay. And they did, and then their buddy couldn't get the camera right, and then the guy holding me he was choking me, and I don't know if he knew he had it tight. He had it tight from the second he put it on. I just thought I can tough this out for a snap, and the guy couldn't figure out the phone, and then, it was reverse face, and I thought I was going to have to start fighting hands and get out of this thing. But
the guy didn't know you were signing up for an MMA match.
Well, yeah, I didn't really know what was going on there, but it all worked out. I'm still here.
Absolutely. And then, obviously the UFC cameras came in, that show became a whole thing. And then, that level of celebrity where you're starring in movies and that sort of thing. I mean, what was that experience like? You're in Meet Dave and, Eddie Murphy and all these guys. You're being on sets with those guys. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I appreciate you knowing that. That movie bombed, so you might be the only person.
He's a big star.
I
remember when that movie happened, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. The girl that I am now married to, the first time she came to my house, I had that movie playing to act like it was in the background and then point out my scene.
That's a great move. I love that.
Which she called me on. She's like, how long have you had this waiting here? And I felt like a fool. But I'll tell you one good experience. I got to do a movie called Grudge Match, which also didn't do so well. But
Wait, it was Al Pacino and Robert De Niro.
De Niro, Stallone.
Yeah.
And I have met a lot of celebrities, and for the most part, they've all been jerks. I have left very disappointed. And I'm sure you have the same experience, whether you'll admit it or not. I'm sure that's happened to you a time or two.
Never.
Right, never. But I will tell you, Stallone and De Niro, I feel like I owe this to them to say, they were the nicest guys. I had the nicest day. I was there for 6 hours on set, which got broken down to about 30 to 45 seconds of total screen time. It took 6 hours to do this. Those guys had their own dressing rooms. They never went in them. They stayed on set. They just visited with us the whole time. Stallone couldn't be a more regular guy. De Niro had no interest in fighting, but he took the time to ask. I'm going, oh my God, you're Robert De Niro. I had a really great experience, and I can't say that about all of them, but I feel like I owe those two guys that they really made my day that day.
Yeah. Did you get any sort of workouts in with those guys? Or
No.
Yeah.
No, I got punched by both of them. That was the scene. And they had a stuntman to take the punch and do all that. And I was like, nah, just stay where you are. I want the full experience of this, right? I'm having such a good time with these guys. Yeah. And I know this is going to be a good story to get to tell somebody you even met Stallone or De Niro is a good story, let alone this. I'm doing the whole thing. So I took all the bumps. I did it all. I don't regret any of it. And it was fun. But I can't always say that, man. Some of these guys I meet and go, wow, I wish I wanted to met you because you let me down.
I mean, do you remember who had the best punch or when they hit you the best?
Wasn't even close. It was Stallone. Yeah. Now De Niro was doing his part out there, but Stallone actually knows how to fight.
Yeah, and he still trains like every day. He's one of those workhorses for sure. Was there anybody that you looked up to when you were growing up? I mean, obviously Rocky movies, that was a cinematic thing.
Sure.
But were there any boxers or MMA guys you were looking up to?
Well, boxers back then. I came from a wrestling background, so if I name drop some wrestlers on you, nobody know who they were. Nobody watches wrestling. But in boxing, the guy who I think is the best fighter of all time, and I know they say that about Floyd right now, and he may be, but in my opinion, it's Sugar Ray Leonard. And, I especially that era, the true four horsemen, Duran, Leonard, Hearns, Hagler. I just think all four of those guys really transcend times and could be world champions backwards or forwards. But Sugar Ray was the best of them all. There's no way to deny it. They all fought, and Sugar came out on top.
I mean, we were talking.
Remember how fast that guy was?
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you watch him on YouTube, you're just gonna be there for hours because he's just so impressive in the ring.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. When you do your own training, sort of, who are you trying to, emulate, or what are you trying to do?
Well, it changes. It changes all the time because you'll have some young guy come in the sport and you go, whoa, I hadn't even thought to do that. Then you got to go in the gym and start working on those skills, and so it kind of goes ups and downs. And I try to watch them all, and I think we have a habit to cling to the guys of our own era and say, well, our era was the toughest. Well, that's not true. You're insulting an entire sport if you say. I see people do that with basketball and say Michael Jordan's the best. It's like, be careful with that, because if he's the best, you're saying the sport hasn't grown in 20 years. And, the best is whoever's the best today. And these guys will get passed up, and you pass the torch to the next guy. And that's the way that it should be. You got to pass the torch, and you got to make sure you leave anything, including a sport, better than the way you found it.
I mean, talking about those guys who are impressive with their training. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who you did the Apprentice show with. I mean, what was that experience like? I mean, that was a bit of a whirlwind, on the heels of our current president having currently hosted it.
He was another guy, right there with Stallone and De Niro, where he did not let me down. That guy couldn't have been a nicer guy. Still to this day, that's one thing that Trump did, if you follow The Apprentice. One thing that Trump did is he really did mentor those people. People that came through that show can still get a hold of him to this day for advice. And Schwarzenegger was the same way. And I didn't know if he would be or not. I didn't know if he was just there reading lines and going to check in and check out. Well, he's not. I could get a hold of him today. If I had a question or needed advice.
Let's call him. Let's get the phone out.
I have to email. I actually don't even have the phone number. But if I email him, it'll take a few days. But he gets back every time.
I mean, that's incredible. Just that response rate. I mean, that's insane. I mean, what was it like being on a set with that dude? I mean, were you able to talk to him a little bit about his roles and favorites?
So let me share this with you. Production never shared this, and I really thought they missed a good storyline here. So Schwarzenegger was here. Let me show the differences between The Apprentice, and this is relevant because the president and the governor got in this big pissing battle back and forth. But one thing that Trump really had on his side is when he was doing The Apprentice, it was real. And what I mean by that is if you won the show, you got a job. You went to Trump Tower and you got put on a construction assignment somewhere. It was real. Schwarzenegger's with Celebrity Apprentice, it's just a ratings grab. There is no job at the end of it. We're just trying to get people to watch and have some fun. So he had a little bit of a disadvantage. So Schwarzenegger is paid to just show up, do certain spots, and go home at the end of the day. Well, in a very short period of time, about 3 days, he got into it. And he began showing up to job sites where we were doing these tasks, where he was not on the clock, was not being paid. And we caught him one day. He was hiding in a building with binoculars, watching us and then taking notes. And apparently in the world of TV, like I get that, I can relate to that. I was a working man, but in the world of TV, apparently it does not work that way. Apparently you do not show up a day on set that you are not paid to be there.
That's when you're a name like him who can obviously charge thousands.
There's a big paycheck that comes with it. No, he got into it. He took his role very serious, and before we knew it, I started this by telling you it wasn't real. It was a ratings grab. Well, it became pretty real pretty fast, and he was really looking at it as though he would, say in Trump's situation where he was going to employ somebody, and that was a cool thing, and I think he deserves credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then getting into Bellator right here, I mean, obviously, that transition in your career. I mean, what was it like when you were first approached by Bellator and the concept of doing that part of the MMA world?
Yeah, I contacted Bellator. I actually reached out to Scott Coker one day and said, you want to talk? And he said, yes.
I'm sure he replied.
Matter of fact, I do. So, that's kind of how that started. But Bellator and the UFC, and for me, it's an industry. It's a sport of MMA. I know the Scott Coker's got to beat Dana, and Dana's got to beat well, let them figure it out. From where I'm standing, it's just an industry. And, I meet some of the same fans and the same viewers that come to both shows. It's kind of like Coke and Pepsi. You might have your favorite, but we have to admit they're both pretty good, right? Yeah. Or Ford and Chevy, everybody's got their favorite. Well, Chevy makes a pretty good truck too, and so we could acknowledge that. I've just seen the entire sport and the entire industry grow, and from where I'm sitting as an athlete, man, those two organizations are very, very similar.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about growing. I mean, you guys are doing Madison Square Garden this Saturday. I mean, that's a huge venue for an MMA fight, which wouldn't have been seen in the past. I mean, tell me a little bit about the preparation for this big fight this Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, Madison Square Garden is like a big, feather in your cap. One as an athlete, but two as a promotion and a business. To be able to fill up the garden, and those tickets aren't cheap, and so it's really something special that has to be played to come there. And so it was a big honor. It was a big compliment to be included in that. And as far as what you say, man, the preparation's been tough. I'm not the leader. My coach is the boss. So I got to do whatever he says whenever he says to do it. And he's a military man. And so you know how that goes. It's going to be early mornings and late nights. And if you sleep more than 3 hours, you're stealing from the government. That's what he believes. So well, I'm a civilian. I don't know if I fall into that, but that's what he believes. So that's what I have to do.
Yeah. What's his name and how long you been working with him?
Clayton Hires. And I don't know what his rank was when he was in the military, but it was something. He actually beat Floyd Mayweather. I'm talking about senior. Oh, wow. And senior only lost 4 fights ever, but my coach Clayton is one of those 4.
Oh, that's amazing. And how often are you going at it? Are you pretty cognizant of your training, a few months out, or do you give yourself a few weeks, or how do you prepare?
I go to practice every day. Every day of my life except Christmas, I go to practice. And but I don't work as hard sometimes. If I'm tired, I go get some water. So there is different levels of intensity.
You get some water.
Yeah, you go get a water break.
Allow myself some water.
You watch the other guys work out a little bit. You get stuck in a position, just eat up the clock. But when you're in training camp, you got to try to win those positions and really be the first one there and the last one out. And we do that twice a day, every day for about 8 to 10 weeks.
Yeah. For people who don't know, what's your history, Wanderlei Silva, and how are you excited to sort of?
This guy drives me crazy.
I just started something. I feel like
this guy drives me crazy. But he'd tell you the same thing about me. I don't know who the bad guy in this story is. I think there's probably enough blame to go around. I've insulted him and he's offended me, and it's gone back and forth for over 10 years. And we were supposed to fight, 3 or 4 years ago, and I ended up suspended, and he followed me to the principal's office, and we both had to run that clock out. So here we are, but I mean, this dates back probably to 2001 from the first time when I stuck my finger in this guy's chest and said, I want to be next. I could beat you. And he didn't know how to handle it. If you ever deal with a bully, and in my opinion, he's a bully. If you ever deal with a bully, they don't know what to do when you stand up to him. And, he was fighting guys left and right, all sorts of guys. But when I called him out, he wouldn't say my name. He wouldn't even look in my direction. And, that empowered me. Now, all of a sudden, I'm the bully. Oh, you don't want to fight. Oh, really? Well, let me go tell everybody you're afraid to meet me at 3 o'clock after school. So, it took me a better part of a decade and a half, but I got him Saturday night. We're going to figure this out one way or the other.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. I mean, I feel like you've had a couple of call-outs in your career. I mean, is this something that you put a lot of thought to? And then what's that feeling after you call somebody out on public television or, in a broadcast or that sort of thing? I mean, have you had a couple favorites that resulted in fights?
Yeah. I don't know if I ever haven't got my way. I mean, when you got to call a guy out, he's got to answer that, especially if you're in this business. And I see so many other guys that are afraid to call someone. They all want to get along. We're not in the get-along business. We're in the fight business. Don't raise your hand and say, put me in, coach, unless you want to fight. That's what we're doing here. You know, I see these other guys all trying to be nice and talking about honor and respect. Man, I don't know anything about honor and respect. I don't know where that came from or what martial arts. I don't even know about the martial. This is a cage fight. Do you want to fight or not? And nobody has to do it. We're not drafted. It's a volunteer army. But if you raise your hand and say yes, well, we're going to crack some eggs to make an omelet here.
Yeah. I mean, I think people can watch it on television. There's a bit of a detachment, obviously. There's a lot of TV shows, that sort of thing. We see things depicted, and it doesn't seem real. But, I mean, you guys are taking the hits. I mean, do you remember the worst hit you've taken or the biggest knockout you got that you were excited about?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. There's three different kinds of hits. You've got the soft hits, right? And then you've got the really hard hits. Neither one of those hurt. The harder the punch, the less that it hurts, because it kind of stuns you, and you see a white. I mean, you kind of can even go numb for a second. It's the in between. It's that guy that doesn't hit very hard, but he's also not. Those are the ones that hurt, where you feel the pain. And I got hit by a guy named Damian Maya, who is not known as I don't think he's ever knocked anyone out or even knocked him down. It hurt so bad. Oh, my goodness. We fought in London. I had a layover the next day in Atlanta before I could fly home to Portland.
This is one of the things I feel like people don't think about, is like this guy has a layover after a huge match, you know? Like, how are you going to ask for extra pillows? Or
that's right. Well, he hit me in the fight in London. The next day on the layover in Atlanta, when I stood up to get off the plane, that's when I finally had my legs back. It was that painful of a shot, and I don't think anyone's ever credited him for how hard he hits, because it's not a hard hit, but god damn it, it's painful.
Right. I mean, you have a couple montages of your knockouts there on the interweb. Do you have any favorites, or was there a favorite knockout that you were able to score?
You know what? I really wanted to land a flying knee, and I caught a guy in California with it, and I felt good about that. We got up and went out to dinner afterwards. You know, it was just competition back then. There was no animosity. It wasn't broadcast or anything, but it was a small show at a casino in California, and I felt I was proud of that because I worked on it and I want to do that technique, and I succeeded. I've tried plenty of other techniques that have failed, so that one worked, so good for me.
That's a lesson in manners right there. You were able to flying knee somebody and then have a dinner with them.
That's
after
right.
That. Yeah.
He made me buy. In hindsight, that's probably right though. The winner should probably buy. Yeah, that's probably
exactly.
Fair.
Do you find obviously people know you from the MMA world? I mean, do you find that people approach you and are you ever aware of like cognizantly of them trying to like start stuff with you or trying to get in that way?
That has happened. Now that was many years ago, but that did used to be a thing where, you know, if you came into the room and you were the tough guy, then the other guy that thinks he's the tough guy has got to, you know, do or say something, knowing you're not going to respond, that you're too professional to respond. But I did used to have to deal with that, and it kind of stopped me from going out. And I kind of like to go out. I was never a drinker. I never had a drop in my life, but I was a designated driver, and I like to go and hang out with the guys. And that did stop me from going out. Now, you know, if I ever do end up in a situation, no, I don't deal with that anymore. But there was a time when people just saw this was a tough man deal, and they didn't really appreciate that there's skill and you know, work that goes into it. And if you don't do that, it's not going to end well for you. Once the sport started to get respected, I quit dealing with some of those jerks.
That's great. And then are there any rituals that you're going to enact before you do this match on Saturday, or things after it?
You know, I got the same process every time. I got to make weight first. My mom brings me a club sandwich with French fries, a side of ranch, and a Coca-Cola big enough to swim in. So I'll have that, and then my uncle's my corner man. We'll go in the back and get warmed up, and when my music hits those speakers, I'll make that walk.
There we go. Can't wait to see it. Okay, we have some questions out in the audience. We're going to start right there.
Hi again.
What's up, beautiful?
Thanks. What's your advice for future fighters that are coming on, like the next generation of fighters who want to take in your footsteps? And
I would tell any athlete in any sport, and wouldn't have to be fighting, but it is about repetition. It is about showing up to practice every day on time. Listen to your coaches. Get the best out of every workout. If you can get yourself just one in anything in life, just 1 degree better every single day, those add up fast.
Great advice. Okay,
Thank
next
you,
question
young
right there.
Besides yourself, who's your favorite trash talker?
My favorite? Oh, man. And I'm a truth talker. I got to tell you, I don't talk trash. If I don't mean it, I won't say it. But I enjoy, well, I mean, I thought The Rock was a lot of fun. I thought Stone Cold was a lot of fun. Now they were purely trash talkers for entertainment, not for competitive reasons. But I'm wildly entertained by Conor McGregor. I find what Floyd is doing to be, you know, there's something to watch there, too.
What's your take on that fight? I have to ask. I mean, what's your take?
I'm
on
into it.
Yeah,
I'm into the fight. I think it's cool. I think it's fun. You know, generally in sport we have to follow a competitive architecture. We just came off the NBA. They did a bracket. It's a bracketed format. But sometimes the game you want doesn't happen. The bracket falls apart. Someone gets injured. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can happen. When you have the power of the pen, like Dana White had in this case, to make whatever fight he wanted and not have to follow rankings or architecture. We, the fans, got the one we want. This was our idea. This wasn't Dana's idea. Dana was the last one to the table. Dana said no repeatedly, and the fans kept saying, come on, man, this is what we want. And he finally said, all right, we'll do it your way. Yeah. So I think that's a pretty cool storyline. I think that's, you know, look, I get competitively. You got a guy that's never lost at boxing against a guy that's never done boxing. I see how this story ends. Yeah. But that doesn't mean I don't want to see it. That doesn't mean it's still not going to be fun. Yeah. And I'm into having some fun.
Totally. Okay, we have one last question back there.
Hi. So my question is, what is your favorite wrestling memory from either your high school or senior or your college career?
Oh boy, without question, I had a goal to be an NCAA All-American, and the way they work that, they have a tournament at the end of the year, and the top 8 placers at the tournament get All-American status. The winner gets to be champion, and the rest of us get to be All-American. So I was in the match that if I won, I would move to that part of the bracket where it guaranteed that status. And I won that match. That was the greatest wrestling memory I've ever had. Most of my other competitive memories have all been disappointing. Those are the ones I remember the most, going, gee, blew it again. Or something like that, or so close. But that one worked out for me. Could it have happened to a better guy, young lady? Could not have happened to a better guy.
Well, we're pulling for you this Saturday, Bellator, Madison Square Garden on Spike Television. And thanks so much for being here, Chael.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.